When I saw the charge for $180,000 on my business account 3 days before Christmas, I thought it was a bank error. But when I discovered that my own daughter had used that money to send her in-laws on a luxury vacation to Europe while calling me a cheapskate, I knew my life had just changed forever. Before we continue, subscribe and hit the bell icon because we post new stories every day. Please leave a like and tell us in the comments what city and country you are watching from. My name is Arthur Vance. I am 64 years old. For the last 3 decades, I built everything I have with these hands, which are now shaking as I write this. I am a business consultant, or rather I was until recently. I founded my own firm in 1992. I worked 16 hours a day for years. I sacrificed vacations, friendships, and opportunities abroad, all for one reason: to give my daughter Emily the life her mother would have wanted her to have. December 19th, 2024 began like any normal Thursday. I woke up at 6 in the morning in my apartment in downtown Chicago. I made black coffee, just like always, and checked my work emails. At 9:15, my phone buzzed with a notification from Chase Bank. Unusual transaction alert on your business account. Additional card number 47689. At first, I thought it was spam or some system glitch. I have alerts set up for any expense over $5,000 on that account because I use it exclusively for company expenses. But this notification was different. 3 transactions in less than 24 hours. $62,000. $58,000. $60,000. Total, $180,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. I called the bank immediately, hoping they would confirm it was fraud or identity theft. Anything but the truth I was about to discover. The operator was a young woman with a professional voice. She reviewed the transactions for 5 eternal minutes. Mr. Vance, the transactions were made with the additional card registered to Emily Vance Miller. 2 charges at Air France for first-class tickets to Paris, and 1 at booking for reservations at the Hotel Le Bristol Paris. All authorized with the correct PIN. Emily, my daughter Emily, the girl I raised alone since she was 11 after cancer took Claire, the young woman to whom I gave everything within my power and beyond. There must be a mistake, I mumbled into the phone, even though I already knew there wasn't. Can you give me the exact details of the reservations? The operator hesitated for a second. Sir, for data protection, I can only confirm that the tickets are for 4 people, departing December 22nd and returning January 5th. The passenger names are Thomas Nelson, Beatrice Nelson, and 2 other companions. Thomas and Beatrice, Emily's in-laws, the parents of Mark, her husband. People I had met barely 5 times in the 6 years they have been married. Always distant, always evaluating me with that look that clearly said I would never be good enough for their social circle. I hung up the phone and sat on my living room sofa for I don't know how long. The hands of the wall clock that Claire bought on our trip to Nashville in 1998 kept moving, but I was paralyzed. I had given that additional card to Emily in 2019, right after her wedding, with a clear and specific instruction. Only for family emergencies, honey. If you ever need something urgent, and I am not available. She had nodded. She had hugged me. She had promised to use it responsibly. For 5 years, there was never a single charge. I trusted her completely. And now this. $180,000. She hadn't called me. She hadn't asked for permission. She hadn't consulted me. She simply took the money as if it were hers by right, as if I were an ATM without feelings or opinions. I forced myself to get up. I walked to my desk and turned on the computer. I needed to see the full statements. I needed to understand exactly what had happened. While I waited for the banking system to load, my mind started connecting details I had ignored for months. Emily's calls getting shorter and colder. The constant excuses not to come for Sunday dinner like we used to. The way Mark always found reasons for us to meet at expensive restaurants, where I ended up paying bills of $300 or $400. The looks they exchanged when I talked about my days, working double shifts, to pay for her college. The statement finally appeared on the screen, and there it was, documented with the cruel precision of digital numbers. First transaction on December 17th at 11:32 in the morning. $62,000 to Air France. 2 first-class tickets, Chicago to Paris. Second transaction that same day at 3:40. $58,000 to Air France. 2 more first-class tickets. Third transaction on December 18th. $60,000 to Le Bristol, Paris. Presidential suite. 18 nights. Emily had split the purchases strategically to prevent the bank from automatically blocking the card for suspicious activity. Any charge over $100,000 requires additional phone authorization. She knew that. She had planned this. I spent the night of December 19th without sleeping. I stared at the ceiling of my room, mentally rehearsing how I would address this situation. Part of me wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, that Emily would call me at any moment apologizing for the misunderstanding. But the phone never rang. At 8 in the morning on December 20th, I took my car keys and drove to the Gold Coast neighborhood, where Emily and Mark live in a 2,000 square foot condo I helped them get. I paid the $70,000 down payment in 2019 as a wedding gift. They only covered the monthly mortgage of $900, which compared to Chicago prices was practically a gift. I rang the doorbell 3 times before Mark opened the door. He was wearing an expensive navy blue silk robe and leather slippers. He looked at me with that expression of annoyance he had perfected over the years. "Andrew, it is 8 in the morning. What are you doing here so early? I need to speak with Emily." Something in my tone must have warned him that this was no time for games, because he stepped aside without arguing. I walked directly into the living room where Emily was sitting on the sofa drinking coffee. She was dressed in white satin pajamas that I recognized immediately, because I had given her $150 to buy them last year. "Dad?" she said without getting up, without even looking surprised to see me. "Did something happen?" I took out my phone and showed her the screen with the bank statement. $180,000, Emily, on my business card, the card I gave you for emergencies. There was a thick silence that seemed to last forever. Emily placed the coffee cup on the table with a slow and deliberate movement. When she finally looked at me, there was no guilt in her eyes. There was no remorse. There was only something cold and distant I had never seen in my own daughter before. "Thomas and Beatrice deserve those vacations," she said, with a voice so calm it froze my blood. "They have worked all their life. They have never been to Europe. Mark and I wanted to give them something special for Christmas, and it didn't occur to you to ask for permission?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "It didn't occur to you to at least call me and consult if you could use $180,000 from my account." Mark walked over and stood next to Emily in a gesture of solidarity that hurt me more than any words. "Arthur, you have always been very controlling with your money." Emily knew you would say no. "Controlling?" I repeated the word as if it were foreign in my mouth. Controlling for expecting my daughter to ask for permission before spending the equivalent of 2 years of salary for most Americans? Emily got up from the sofa with measured movements. "Dad, they are my real family now. Thomas and Beatrice have welcomed me like a real daughter. They invite me to their gatherings. They introduce me to their important friends. They make me feel valued." Every word was a stab. "Your real family," I whispered. "Emily, I raised you alone since you were 11. "Yes, you raised me," she interrupted with a tone she had never used with me before. "But you were never really present, were you? Always working, always busy, always with your meetings and your clients. The Nelsons do have time for me. Beatrice calls me 3 times a week. Thomas asks about my day. They truly care. I felt the ground move beneath my feet. I worked 16 hours a day to give you the life your mother would have wanted you to have, to pay for the private prep school, so you could study business administration at Wharton, so you wouldn't lack anything." "I know," said Emily with a sigh of exasperation. And you always remind me of it. At every dinner, in every call, I worked so hard for you. I sacrificed so much. I gave you everything. It is exhausting, Dad. Mark put his hand on Emily's shoulder. Look, Arthur, we understand you are upset, but the tickets are already bought. The reservations confirmed. Thomas and Beatrice leave the day after tomorrow. We cannot cancel now without looking bad. Looking bad? The laugh that came out of my throat sounded hollow, even to me. You care about looking bad to your in-laws, but you don't care about robbing me. It is not theft, Emily replied coldly. It is a card you gave me. Technically, I had authorization to use it. For emergencies, Emily. That was the condition. A family emergency. This is a family emergency, Mark argued with a twisted logic that left me breathless. The emergency is that my parents have never traveled abroad and deserve to see Paris before they are too old. Emily, the girl who used to climb onto my lap every night, asking me to read her stories. Mark, the man who had promised me at his wedding that he would take care of my daughter and make her happy. And there they were, justifying a theft of $180,000 as if it were a favor they were doing me. They deserve the best, Emily added, crossing her arms. Unlike you. You were always stingy with everything except when you could show off in front of others. Thomas and Beatrice are truly generous. They don't put conditions on their love. That last phrase was the one that broke me inside. They don't put conditions on their love, as if I had conditioned mine, as if every extra hour worked, every canceled vacation, every opportunity rejected to be at her piano recitals had not been pure and unconditional love. I understand, I said finally, my voice sounding strangely calm even to myself. I understand perfectly. I turned around and walked toward the door. Emily called me once. Dad, don't be dramatic. But I didn't stop. I took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. I needed to move. I needed to get out of that place where everything I had built for 30 years had just turned to ashes. When I reached my car, I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. For the first time since Claire died in 2003, I allowed tears to flow freely down my face. I cried for the girl I had lost. I cried for the years invested. I cried for the man I was, who believed that love and sacrifice would be sufficient. But while I cried, something else was being born inside me. It wasn't just pain, it was clarity, a cold and crystalline clarity that told me exactly what I had to do next. I drove back to my apartment in the Loop without really remembering how I got there. I parked the car, went up to the 5th floor, locked the door behind me, and simply collapsed into the armchair where Claire used to sit and knit while we watched movies on Friday nights. The rage had passed. The initial shock had disappeared. What remained was a void so deep I could barely breathe. I got up like an automaton and walked to the hallway closet, where I kept the boxes with photographs and documents I hadn't reviewed in years. I needed to remember. I needed to understand at what moment everything went wrong. I opened the first box, and there it was. The blue photo album Claire had started when Emily was born in 1992. The first pages showed a tiny baby wrapped in white blankets from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Claire holding Emily with that radiant smile that lit up any room. Me, 25 years younger, with pitch black hair and without the gray that now dominated my temples, looking at my newborn daughter as if she were the greatest miracle in the universe. And she was. For 11 years, we were a complete family. Claire worked as a teacher at an elementary school in Lincoln Park. I was building my consulting firm from scratch, working from our dining room because we couldn't afford an office yet. We were happy with little. Vacations at Lake Geneva instead of exotic destinations. Home-cooked dinners instead of restaurants. But there was love. A lot of love. I turned the pages slowly. Emily at 2 years old on her first day of daycare. Emily at 4 years old dressed as a princess for Halloween. Emily at 7 losing her first tooth. Emily at 9 in her first piano lesson, sitting in front of the keyboard with an expression of absolute concentration. Then I reached the photos of 2003 and my heart compressed. Claire in the hospital, thin, pale, smiling bravely for the camera while Emily held her hand. Pancreatic cancer had appeared out of nowhere in February. By July, she was gone. I remember that funeral as if it were yesterday. July 23, 2003, Rose Hill Cemetery, 100 degrees of suffocating heat. Emily crying, clinging to my black suit, while I tried to keep myself together for her. Claire was only 36 years old, Emily only 11. I took out another box, this one full of receipts and documents I had meticulously kept for years. Bills from the private prep school, $1,200 a month for 7 years. Receipts for private math, tutoring, when Emily struggled with algebra, $60 a week for 2 years. Vouchers for piano lessons at the Music Institute, $200 a month for 8 years. Every paper was evidence of a decision I made. After losing Claire, I could have sent Emily to a public school, saved that money for myself, took the easy road. But I didn't. Claire had wanted the best for our daughter, and I was going to ensure she got it, even if it killed me. And it almost killed me. I found my planner from 2004. The year after Claire's death, I had noted every commitment, every meeting, every event. Wake up at 5:30 in the morning, make Emily's breakfast. Take her to school at 8. Work with clients from 9 to 2. Pick up Emily at 2:30. Lunch together. Take her to piano or her friend Sarah's house. Return to work from 5 to 11 at night. Return home. Check that Emily had done her homework. Tuck her in and then work until 1 in the morning on proposals and projects. I repeated that brutal routine for years. Weekends were not for rest. They were time to be with Emily. Parks, movies, the beach, museums. I tried to be father and mother simultaneously, knowing I would never be enough, but praying it would be something. I found a photo of Emily's high school graduation in 2010. Her with her cap and gown smiling widely. Me standing next to her, clearly exhausted but proud. That night she had told me, "Thank you, Dad, for everything. I know it has been hard." I hugged her for 5 full minutes, crying on her shoulder, feeling finally validated. Where had that girl gone? When did she transform into the cold woman who this morning told me the Nelsons were her real family? I kept searching through the papers. Lease agreement for the apartment I got her in Philadelphia when she was accepted into Wharton in 2011. $850 a month that I paid in full. College tuition, $9,000 a year for 4 years. Graduation trip to Prague with her classmates in 2014. $2,500 I gave her without thinking twice. In 2015, Emily met Mark at a business conference. He worked at his father's financial consulting firm. He was handsome, self-assured. He came from a wealthy family from Highland Park. At first, I liked him. He seemed to treat her with respect, to make her happy. The first time I met Thomas and Beatrice Nelson was at a formal dinner at their house in 2017. They lived in a 3-story mansion with a private garden. Thomas was a retired bank executive. Beatrice had never worked. She dedicated her time to charity works and social clubs. During the entire dinner, they evaluated me with critical looks, asking veiled questions about my income, my education, my connections. "So, Arthur, did you study at a state university?" Beatrice asked with a tone that distilled superiority. How admirable. Working-class people who better themselves always have my respect. Mark and Emily got married in June of 2019. I paid $50,000 for that wedding at the Four Seasons. 300 guests. Most of them friends of the Nelsons whom I didn't know. Live orchestra. 5-course menu. Open bar of Moet champagne. Emily had specifically asked me not to skimp because she wanted to impress Mark's family. I gave a speech that night. I spoke of Claire, of how she would be proud to see our daughter turned into a beautiful and successful woman. I spoke of the difficult years, of how Emily had been my strength to keep going. I ended by saying, Emily, you are my greatest achievement. I love you more than anything in this world. The people applauded. Emily cried. Mark gave me an awkward hug. But Thomas and Beatrice remained seated, exchanging looks I couldn't decipher then, but that now I understood perfectly. Disdain. I closed the albums and the boxes. The December sun came through the window, creating long shadows on the wooden floor. I looked at the clock. 3 in the afternoon on December 20th. I had spent 32 years of my life building a relationship with my daughter. 32 years of sacrifices, unconditional love, constant presence despite what she claimed. And in a single morning, that daughter had told me that I had never been her real family. I got up from the floor where I had been sitting, surrounded by memories, and walked to my desk. It was time to stop crying for the past and start planning the future. On Monday, December 21st, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in months. I picked up the phone at 7 in the morning and dialed a number I knew by heart for 40 years, David Owens. "Good morning," answered the familiar voice on the third ring. "David, it is Arthur. I need to see you today. It is urgent." David Owens had been my accountant when I opened the consultancy in 1992. Over time, he became a lawyer as well, specializing in commercial and family law. But more than that, he was probably the only person in Chicago I could call a true friend. He had been at my wedding, at Claire's funeral, at every important moment of my adult existence. "What happened, Arthur? Your voice sounds terrible. I prefer to explain it in person. Do you have space this morning?" There was a brief pause. "I have a meeting at 9, but I can cancel it. Come to my office at 8:30. David's office was on Michigan Avenue in a restored building with high ceilings and windows overlooking the city. I arrived punctually carrying a folder with all the bank statements I had printed the night before. David received me personally at the entrance. He was 67 years old, completely white hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and that air of quiet dignity that only comes with decades of experience. He studied me with those gray eyes that missed no detail. "You look haggard," he said bluntly. "When was the last time you slept well?" "2 nights ago, before I discovered that my daughter stole $180,000 from me." His expression changed immediately. "Sit down. Tell me everything." I told him the complete story. The bank notification, the transactions for the Nelsons, the confrontation with Emily, her words about the real family. David listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes in his leather notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his executive chair and exhaled slowly. "Arthur, this is misappropriation of funds. Technically, Emily had authorized access to the card, but the usage clearly exceeds the purpose for which it was granted. We could press criminal charges. I don't want to destroy my daughter," I said automatically, although part of me was no longer so sure of that statement. "I just want to understand the full magnitude of what she has done." David nodded. "Then let's do a comprehensive audit. Give me access to all your accounts linked to Emily, and let's review exactly how much she has spent and when this pattern began." We spent the next 4 hours locked in his office. David had specialized software for forensic financial analysis. He entered my banking credentials and began tracking every transaction linked to Emily's additional card since I gave it to her in June 2019. What we discovered froze my blood. "Look at this," said David, pointing to his computer screen. "The first 5 years there was no charge. Absolutely nothing from June 2019 to February 2024. But then, look here." On the screen appeared a timeline with red dots marking transactions. The first red dot was from March 3rd, 2024, $45,000 to a construction and renovation company in Highland Park. "Renovations?" I asked, confused. Emily never mentioned renovations in her condo. David clicked on the transaction detail. It wasn't at her condo. According to the billing address, it was at 23 Pearson Street. Does it ring a bell? I felt my stomach turn. That is the address of Thomas and Beatrice Nelson. David continued navigating through the transactions. April 15th, 2024. $32,000 to a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Lake Forest. Attached was a photo of the vehicle, a metallic black E-Class Mercedes. Emily doesn't drive a Mercedes, I mumbled. She has a Honda Civic I bought her in 2020. Exactly, confirmed David. This isn't for her either. But it didn't end there. Starting in May, there was a consistent monthly pattern. $3,000 here, $5,000 there, $4,500 somewhere else. Expensive restaurants in Highland Park, designer clothing stores, jewelry stores, a particularly painful transaction of $7,000 in September to a winery specializing in premium French wines. All charged to your card, said David with a grave voice. All while you had no idea. He did the total calculations on an Excel sheet. The final figure appeared in the bottom right corner of the screen. $240,000. $240,000 in less than 10 months. $60,000 more than I had initially calculated. Emily hadn't just paid for the luxury vacation to Paris. She had been financing the Nelsons' entire lifestyle for almost a year. How did I not realize this before? I asked aloud, feeling a mixture of rage and shame. How did I overlook this for months? David closed the laptop and looked at me with a compassionate expression. Arthur, that business account moves hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly. Expenses of $3,000 or $5,000 get lost easily among vendor invoices, payroll, services. Emily knew exactly what she was doing. The amounts were small enough to go unnoticed, but large enough to keep the Nelsons living comfortably. I ran my hands over my face, feeling the weight of each of my 64 years. So it wasn't impulsive. It was systematic. Planned. Completely, confirmed David. Look at the patterns. Always the 15th of every month. $3,000 to $5,000. Like a salary. The big expenses, renovations, and the vehicle she made in months. Where your account had more movement due to large projects. April and March are traditionally your strongest months. He was right. Emily knew my business almost as well as I did. For years I had explained to her about cash flows, peak seasons, financial management. I thought I was educating her, preparing her to be independent. Instead, I had given her the exact tools to rob me efficiently. David took out a new folder from his desk. We have several legal options. We can file a complaint for misappropriation, demand full restitution with interest, even seek criminal charges that could result in prison time. Prison? The word sounded strange in my mouth. It is a real possibility, Arthur. We are talking about $250,000. That is not a misunderstanding. It is sustained fraud. I stared out the window toward Michigan Avenue. Outside, people were walking with Christmas shopping bags, enjoying the festive atmosphere. Couples holding hands. Families with excited children. A world that seemed alien to the collapse of my own reality. I don't want her to go to prison, I said finally. But I also cannot simply ignore this and continue as if nothing happened. David nodded slowly. Then there is another route, one that protects you without necessarily destroying her, although it will have permanent consequences. Are you ready to hear it? I looked him straight in the eyes. Tell me what I have to do. David got up from his desk and walked to an antique dark wood filing cabinet. He took out several forms and documents which he placed in front of me with the precision of a surgeon preparing instruments. Comprehensive asset protection. He began to explain. First, we immediately cancel all cards linked to your name that Emily can use. Second, we remove her as a beneficiary of any life insurance, bank account, or investment where she appears. Third, we modify your will to guarantee that your estate goes exactly where you decide. I listened to every word, feeling how something fundamental changed inside me. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was something deeper and definitive. The recovery of my own autonomy. How long will it take to execute all this? I asked. If we act now, I can have the bank cancellations ready in 24 hours. The will modification requires an appointment with a notary, but I know Harvey White since college. I can get you a slot for December 27th. Do it, I responded without hesitation. Everything. Today, David began making calls while I signed authorizations. First call to Chase, where I spoke directly with the business account manager. I explained that I needed to cancel additional card number 4789 for unauthorized use. The manager, a man named Albert, who had handled my account for 15 years, asked no unnecessary questions. Mr. Vance, I am proceeding with immediate cancellation. The card will be inactive in the next 30 minutes. Do you also wish to review limits and authorizations on other accounts? Yes. Any account where Emily Vance Miller appears as authorized or beneficiary. I want full documentation. Albert took 10 minutes to check the system. You have 4 accounts where your daughter is listed. The business one we already mentioned. A joint savings account opened in 2006. A fixed-term deposit of $120,000, where she is secondary beneficiary, and an investment account in index funds. Every word was a reminder of how much I had trusted Emily. The joint savings account I opened when she was 14, thinking it would be educational to teach her about personal finance. The fixed-term deposit was my emergency fund. The investment account, my future retirement. Remove her from all of them, I ordered with a firm voice. Absolutely all of them, and send me written confirmation of every modification. While the bank processed the changes, David contacted the insurance companies. I had 2 important life insurance policies. One for $300,000 with State Farm, and another for $500,000 with Prudential. In both, Emily appeared as the sole beneficiary since she turned 18. The conversation with the State Farm agent was particularly revealing. Mr. Vance, changing beneficiaries is your absolute right, but I must ask you, are you sure? Your daughter has been a beneficiary for 14 years. It is a significant change. Completely sure, I replied. In fact, I want to designate new beneficiaries right now. I had thought about this on the way to David's office. If something happened to me, my estate would not go to finance more luxury vacations for the Nelsons. It would go to places where it really mattered. Widow and Life Foundation is primary beneficiary of 70%. It is an organization that supports widowed parents raising children alone. The remaining 30% for the Claire Vance Scholarship, a program that helps orphaned students. The agent remained silent for a few seconds. Those are excellent organizations, Mr. Vance. I will process the changes today. It was 2 p.m. when we finished with the financial institutions. David ordered food from a nearby restaurant, but I could barely eat. Adrenaline kept me functioning, but I knew eventually exhaustion would arrive. There is something else you must consider, said David while reviewing his notes. The condo where Emily and Mark live. You said you paid the $70,000 down payment as a wedding gift. That is correct. They pay the monthly mortgage. In whose name is the deed? And I had to think for a moment. Emily and Mark, co-owners at 50% each. I only contributed the initial money. David nodded. Then legally you have no rights over that property. The money was a gift, not a loan. There is no way to recover it. That information should have bothered me, but curiously, I felt nothing. $70,000 6 years ago when I still believed I was investing in my daughter's happiness. Now I knew I had been buying illusions. What about the monthly financial support? I asked suddenly. For years I have transferred money to Emily for various expenses. David reviewed the statements we had printed. I see regular transfers, $15,000 monthly since July 2019. You never signed any document formalizing this as a permanent obligation, right? No, I just did it because I thought they needed it while establishing their life together. Then you can stop it whenever you want. There is no contract. There is no legal obligation. $15,000 a month for 5.5 years. $990,000 in total. Almost $1 million that Emily had received without even asking because I assumed it was my duty as a father to keep providing. Cancel the automatic transfer, I said, starting in January, nothing more. David took note and then looked at me with a serious expression. Arthur, all this is going to have immediate consequences for Emily. When she discovers she has no access to cards, accounts, insurance, monthly transfers, her financial situation is going to collapse completely. I know. Are you prepared for that? For the calls? The messages? Maybe even her showing up at your door? I thought of the 11-year-old Emily crying at her mother's funeral. I thought of the 17-year-old Emily graduating with honors. I thought of the 27-year-old Emily walking down the aisle, and then I thought of the 32-year-old Emily looking at me coldly, saying the Nelsons were her real family. I am prepared, I replied with a certainty that surprised myself. David closed his folder. Then there is one last thing you must do. Something just for you, not related to Emily or the money or legal consequences. I looked at him questioning. You need to think about your own life, Arthur. You have spent 32 years living exclusively for your daughter. What are you going to do now for yourself? The question hit me like a fist in the stomach. What was I going to do for myself? I was 64. Good health. A successful company that practically ran itself thanks to my competent team. For the first time in decades, I had no immediate family obligations. I don't know, I admitted quietly. Then find out, said David with a small smile. Because this isn't just cutting ties with Emily. It is recovering your own existence. That night back in my apartment, I didn't open photo albums or review documents from the past. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for something I had vaguely considered for years but never had the courage to pursue. International volunteer programs for retired professionals. I found dozens of options. Teaching English in Thailand. Business consulting for entrepreneurs in Vietnam. Community building projects in Cambodia. Every description opened a window to a completely different life. I renewed my passport that same night online, paying the rush fee. It would be ready in 5 days. Then, almost without thinking, I searched for flights to Bangkok. There was one available on January 15th. One way, economy class, $840. I hovered the cursor over the buy button and stared at it for 5 full minutes. This was the moment. The decision that would change everything permanently. I clicked. The next 2 days passed in a strange calm. I received no calls from Emily, no messages, no sign that she had noticed the changes I had implemented. David assured me that all cancellations were active since December 22nd at 8 in the morning. The cards were dead, the accounts blocked, the automatic transfers suspended. It was just a matter of time. On December 23rd at 9:15 at night, my phone exploded with calls. First call, Emily. I rejected it. Second call 30 seconds later. Emily again. Rejected. Third, fourth, fifth call in the span of 3 minutes. All rejected. Then the text messages arrived. 15 in total. Each one more desperate than the last. Dad, pick up, please. I need to talk to you urgent. The cards don't work. I'm at the restaurant, and none of them go through. You are humiliating me on purpose. Answer now. I left the phone on the table and continued eating my bowl of homemade lentils calmly. I had waited for this moment for 3 days. I knew exactly what was happening and where. Emily had booked a table at the Senator, one of the most exclusive and expensive restaurants in the Gold Coast, to celebrate early Christmas Eve with the Nelsons. 20 people. Thomas, Beatrice, Mark, Mark's brothers, cousins, uncles. An early celebration before the in-laws left for Paris the next day. Naturally, Emily had assumed she would pay with the cards linked to my account. She had probably bragged to Beatrice about how generous the dinner would be, the best of the menu, premium wines, special desserts, all to impress her real family. And now all the cards were declined in front of 20 witnesses. The sixth call came at 9:32. This time I answered. I put it on speaker and left the phone on the table while I kept eating. Dad! Emily's voice was pure panic. What did you do? The cards don't work, none of the 5. I am here with Mark's whole family, and the waiter says they are all canceled. I finished chewing before answering. My voice came out calm, almost monotone. I canceled them last Monday, Emily. All of them. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear voices in the background. Murmurs, the clinking of glasses. You canceled them? Why would you do something like that without warning me? Why warn you? I responded with a question. You didn't warn me when you spent $180,000 on vacation for the Nelsons. I thought we were following the same communication protocol. Dad, this is different. I'm here with Thomas and Beatrice, with their whole family. The bill is $4,000. You are making me look like a liar. I took a sip of water. I am not making you look like anything, daughter. You decided to book a $4,000 dinner, assuming I would pay for it. That was your decision, not mine. I don't have $4,000. Mark doesn't either. You are going to humiliate us in front of everyone. Then I suggest you call your real family, I said with a calm that surprised even me. Thomas and Beatrice. The people who, according to you, value you more than I do. I am sure they will be delighted to pay for their own celebration dinner. I heard Emily gasp. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. In fact, Emily, this is just the beginning. You chose your real family 4 days ago in your living room. You said the Nelsons are who really matter to you, who make you feel valued. So now they can take care of you. I release you completely from me. What does that mean? Her voice went up an octave. Release from you? It means exactly what it sounds like. No cards, no access to accounts, no monthly transfers, no insurance with your name. Nothing. You are officially independent from this absent and controlling father who was never present. I could hear her breathing agitatedly. Dad, you cannot do this. How are we going to pay for the apartment? The private school you promised for when we have kids? The monthly expenses? You will have to figure it out yourselves. Or better yet, ask Thomas and Beatrice. Surely, after all the gifts you have given them with my money, they will be happy to return the favor. There was a confused noise, voices rising in the background. Mark took the phone. Arthur, this is ridiculous. You cannot just cut everything like this. Emily is your daughter. Emily told me 4 days ago that I am not her real family, I replied with a voice of steel. And you know what, Mark? She is right. Real family doesn't steal. Real family doesn't lie. Real family doesn't spend $250,000 behind your back and then call you a cheapskate when you confront them. $250,000? Mark sounded genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Ask your wife. Ask her about the $45,000 in renovations for your parents' house, the $32,000 for the Mercedes, the thousands monthly for 10 months. It is all documented, every dollar. Absolute silence. Then Emily took the phone back, her voice now mixed with sobs. Dad, please, I beg you, don't do this here. Not now. We can talk tomorrow. We can solve this. But please reactivate even just one card so I can pay this dinner. No. Dad, you said they deserve the best, Emily, that they are your real family. Then prove it. Make them pay for the best. Or better yet, run out of the restaurant without paying and face the consequences of your own decisions for the first time in your life. They will report us for fraud if we leave without paying, whispered Emily, terrified. Then I suggest someone find $4,000 quickly. You have your own cards, right? The ones Mark and you have from your jobs. Another silence. They have limits of $1,500 each. It is not enough. What a pity. Goodbye, Emily. Wait, don't hang up, Dad. Please listen to me. I hung up. I turned off the phone completely. Got up from the table. Washed my plate. Dried it and put it in the cupboard. Then I made chamomile tea and sat on the balcony watching the Christmas lights of Chicago. I imagined the scene at the restaurant. Emily crying. Mark frantically calling his bank, trying to increase credit limits. Thomas and Beatrice mentally calculating if they had enough cash between everyone. The other guests murmuring, judging, wondering what kind of financial disaster had occurred. The humiliation Emily felt at that moment was a tiny fraction of what I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel victory. I only felt a door closing definitively somewhere deep in my chest. At 11 at night, I turned on the phone briefly. I had 53 messages and 18 missed calls. I didn't read any of them. I simply verified that my alarm was set for 6 in the morning. Tomorrow was December 24th, Christmas Eve, and I had an important appointment with the notary on the 27th. There was still much to do. December 24th, 25th, and 26th. I spent in deliberate silence. I turned off my phone completely and dedicated myself to simple tasks: deep cleaning the apartment, organizing documents, donating clothes I hadn't worn in years. Every object leaving my life was like lifting weight off me. The morning of December 27th. I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced since before Claire's death. The sky was clear. One of those winter days in Chicago where the sun shines with a deceptive strength that doesn't really warm. I dressed in my best charcoal gray suit, the same one I had worn for Emily's wedding, but now I wore it with a completely different purpose. Harvey White's notary office was located on a quiet street in the Loop, in a 19th century building with solid wood doors and mosaic floors. Harvey and David had studied law together at the University of Chicago in the 70s. Now, at 68, Harvey was one of the most respected notaries in Illinois. He received me personally in his office, lined with shelves full of leather-bound legal codes. He was a tall, thin man with a perfectly trimmed white beard and manners that recalled a more formal era. "Arthur," he said, shaking my hand firmly. David explained the general situation. "I am very sorry for what you're going through." "Thank you, Harvey. I appreciate that you could make space during these dates. For important cases, there is always space." He sat behind his antique desk and opened a thick folder. "David prepared the draft of the will, according to your instructions. Before proceeding, I need to confirm some fundamental details." I nodded, settling into the high-backed chair across from him. "Your total estimated estate is approximately $900,000, began Harvey, reading from the document. "This includes your apartment downtown valued at $350,000, your bank accounts with $220,000, investments in funds for $280,000, and your share in the consulting firm valued at $50,000 after debts and obligations. Every figure represented decades of work, every dollar earned with effort, sacrifice, sleepless nights and lost weekends, and now I was going to decide consciously that none of that would go to Emily." "Correct?" I confirmed with a steady voice. "You propose designating 2 charitable organizations as primary beneficiaries, 70% equivalent to $630,000 for the Widow and Life Foundation, 30% or $270,000 for the Claire Vance Scholarship Program at the University of Chicago." I had chosen the name of the scholarship program personally. Claire had been a teacher for 13 years. Educating vulnerable children had been her passion. What better way to honor her memory than helping orphaned youth obtain a college education they otherwise couldn't afford? "That is correct," I replied, feeling a strange peace. Harvey turned the page. "As for your daughter, Emily Vance Miller, you propose leaving her only objects of no significant monetary value, specifically the wristwatch that belonged to her mother Claire, the family photo albums, and Claire's personal jewelry kept in your safety deposit box." I paused at that point. Claire's jewelry, her engagement ring with a small diamond I bought saving for 6 months, her pearl earrings she had inherited from her grandmother, the silver necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. Incalculable sentimental value. Monetary value maybe $10,000 in total? "Yes," I mumbled. "Those things belong to her by right. They are memories of her mother. I would never take that away from her." Harvey observed me over his reading glasses. "Arthur, you understand that this will effectively eliminate your only daughter from any inheritance. If at any moment you change your opinion, I am not going to change it. I interrupted gently but firmly. Harvey, my daughter told me I am not her real family. She stole $240,000 from me over 10 months to finance the lifestyle of people who appreciate her more than I do. She used my trust as a weapon against me. I am not punishing her on a whim. I am protecting what I built for 40 years, so it goes to causes that will truly value it. Harvey nodded slowly. Very well. Then let's proceed with the signing. The process took 40 minutes. Harvey read the full will aloud, every clause, every specification. 2 witnesses from the office entered to witness the signing, an older woman who worked as a legal secretary and a young man who was a law intern. Both watched as I signed 3 copies of the document with permanent blue ink. When the last signature was complete, Harvey stamped each copy with the official seal. The sound of the stamp hitting the paper resonated in the quiet office with a finality that made me shiver. Done, announced Harvey. This will is officially registered. 1 copy remains in the archives, another goes to the central registry, and the 3rd is yours. In case of your death, the designated executors will execute these instructions. I took my copy of the will and put it in the briefcase I had brought. It weighed barely a few ounces, but it felt like I was carrying the definitive closure of an entire chapter of my existence. Thank you, Harvey, for everything. One last thing, Arthur, he said as I got up to leave. This document is legally solid, but if you ever decide to modify it, you can do so. Wills are not definitive until I'm dead, I completed with a sad smile. I know, but I am not going to modify it. I left the notary office at 11:30 in the morning. The winter sun illuminated the narrow streets. Tourists walked, taking photos of the architecture. A young couple kissed by the river. The world kept turning completely oblivious to the personal earthquake I had just executed. I walked aimlessly for an hour, processing what I had done. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt something much deeper and liberating. I felt that I had finally recovered myself. I went into a small cafe near the river and ordered a cortado. While I waited, I took out my phone. I turned it on for the first time in 4 days. 92 unread messages, 37 missed calls, voicemails I wouldn't listen to. Instead of checking any of that, I opened the browser and returned to the flight page I had visited days ago. The ticket to Bangkok for January 15th was still available. This time I didn't hesitate even 5 seconds. I bought the ticket. Economy class. One way. $840 charged to my personal card. Confirmation of purchase. Flight IB 3154. Chicago to Bangkok via Madrid. January 15th, 2025. Departure at 6:40 in the morning. I looked at the confirmation on my phone screen for a full minute. 64 years. My entire adult life dedicated to building a company, raising a daughter, fulfilling obligations, and now for the first time since I was 25, I was going to do something completely for me and by me. The waiter brought my coffee. I gave him a generous tip and left the cafe feeling lighter than in decades. I passed the last week of December preparing for my departure. I sold furniture I wouldn't need, donated books to public libraries, canceled subscriptions and services. Every action was one more step toward the freedom I had chosen. January 1st, 2025 dawned cold and cloudy. I made coffee while looking out the window at the empty streets after the New Year celebrations. I hadn't gone to any party. I hadn't toasted with anyone. I had simply eaten dinner alone, read a book, and fallen asleep at 11 at night. At 9 in the morning, the doorbell of my apartment rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman of about 55 with brown hair tied back and a worried expression. It took me a moment to recognize her. Monica Ruiz, Claire's younger sister, Emily's aunt. I opened the door cautiously. Monica. Arthur, she said bluntly, we need to talk. Can I come in? I let her in. Monica and I had never been close after Claire's death. She lived in Milwaukee with her husband, and we saw each other maybe twice a year at obligatory family gatherings. But now she was here in my living room, looking at me with a mixture of concern and something that looked like anger. Emily came to see me 3 days ago. She began without sitting down, asking for money. $50,000 loan. And did you give it to her? I asked with genuine curiosity. Of course not, replied Monica with indignation. I asked her what she needed that amount for, and you know what she told me? That you had cut all her financial support without reason, that you had canceled cards, accounts, transfers, everything, that you were being cruel and vindictive. I sat on the sofa and signaled her to do the same. And you believed her? Monica finally sat, but on the edge of the chair, tense. Not completely. I have known Emily since she was born. I have seen her manipulate situations since she was a child to get what she wants. So I called my cousin Sylvia, who was friends with David Owens. Sylvia told me a very different version of the facts. What did she tell you exactly? I asked calmly. That Emily spent more than $200,000 of your money without permission, that she used it to finance her in-laws' lifestyle for almost a year, that when you confronted her, she told you they were her real family, and you were not. Monica looked directly at me. Is it true? Every word. Monica closed her eyes and sighed deeply. My God, Arthur, I had no idea. Emily never mentioned any of this. She only cried, saying you were unfair, that you were always controlling with money, that you never valued her. I worked 16 hours a day for years to give her everything Claire would have wanted her to have. I said with a calm voice. I paid for private school, university, wedding, down payment on her apartment. I transferred $15,000 monthly since she got married. And when I discovered she was systematically robbing me, she called me a cheapskate. Monica brought her hands to her face. I cannot believe she did that. Claire would be devastated. That is why I took the decisions I took, I explained. Not for revenge, for self-dignity. I told her I wouldn't lend her a single dollar, continued Monica. I told her if she really needed money, she should get a job like any 32-year-old person. Do you know what she answered? That she had never had to work because you always covered everything and now she didn't know how to start. Those words hit me with unexpected force. Emily had never worked a day in her life. After graduating from Wharton in 2015, she had gotten a symbolic position at a friend's art gallery. 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, earning $800 a month that she spent completely on clothes. The rest of her expenses, all of them, were covered by me. Does Mark work? I asked, supposedly at his father's firm. But Sylvia investigated a little. Apparently Thomas has him on the payroll, but Mark goes to the office 2 or 3 times a week maximum. His salary is $2,000 a month. Between him and Emily, they barely scrape together $3,000 of real income. $3,000 a month. Her apartment had a mortgage of $900. Basic expenses, electricity, water, internet, condo fees. Easily added another $600. Food, transport, car insurance, another $500. They were already at $2,000 without including absolutely any luxuries. Outings, clothes, restaurants, travel. They cannot support themselves, I said aloud, understanding finally the magnitude of the financial disaster looming for them. No, confirmed Monica, and now that the Nelsons discovered there is no more of your money flowing, they are distancing themselves too. What do you mean? Monica took out her phone and showed me screenshots of conversations. My niece Elena is friends with Mark's cousin. Look what she wrote her 2 days ago. I read the messages with growing astonishment. Mark's cousin, a girl named Ariana, wrote, My Uncle Thomas and Aunt Beatrice are furious with Emily. They say she deceived them, making them believe her father was a generous millionaire, when in reality he was a normal man Emily was robbing. They feel humiliated because now the whole social circle knows their luxury vacation to Paris was paid with stolen money. They no longer invite Emily and Mark to family gatherings. The Nelsons abandoned her, I whispered incredulously. Her real family abandoned her as soon as she stopped being financially useful. Exactly, said Monica bitterly, And the whole Ruiz family, Claire's family, is indignant with Emily. My mother, Emily's grandmother, found out 2 days ago and cried for hours. She said her granddaughter had dishonored Claire's memory. I remained silent, processing all this information. I hadn't sought revenge. I hadn't planned to destroy Emily socially. I had simply cut my financial support and let the natural consequences of her actions unfold. But those consequences were being more devastating than I imagined. "What are you going to do now?" asked Monica softly. "I am going to Bangkok on January 15th, I replied calmly. "I am going to teach English and Spanish to children who really need it. I am going to live for the first time in decades without carrying the weight of obligations that were never appreciated." Monica nodded slowly. "Arthur, I know Emily hurt you terribly, but she is still Claire's daughter. Claire's daughter died when she decided 300 wealthy strangers were more important than the father who raised her alone." I replied with a firm voice but without anger. "The woman who came to your house asking for $50,000 is not the girl you knew. It is someone I no longer recognize." Monica got up to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Just so you know, I told Emily exactly what I think. I told her she had betrayed everything Claire represented, that if her mother could see her now, she would be ashamed. Emily cried, but she didn't ask for forgiveness. She just kept insisting that you were the problem." After Monica left, I sat on my balcony looking at the city. Somewhere in Chicago, Emily and Mark were facing a complete financial collapse. The Nelsons had rejected them. The extended family judged them, and they had absolutely no safety net, because for 32 years that net had been me. For the first time I felt something like sadness. Not for me, for Emily, for the life she herself had destroyed. January 15th, 2025. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, not by the alarm, but because my body knew something fundamental was changing. I made the last coffee in my apartment. I looked one last time at the streets of Chicago from my balcony and closed the door with a sensation of finality that wasn't painful but liberating. David took me to the airport. During the ride, we barely spoke. He understood that some goodbyes require silence. At the departure terminal, he hugged me tightly. "Take care, Arthur, and call me when you need anything, whatever it is." Thank you, David, for everything, for 40 years of real friendship. I went through security carrying only 2 suitcases. Everything I owned now fit in 260 pounds of luggage. The rest I had sold, donated, or left in storage. I felt I should be scared. A man of 64 years traveling alone to an unknown continent with no return date. But I only felt excitement. The flight to Bangkok via Madrid lasted 14 hours with the layover. I passed that time reading a guide to Thailand I had bought, studying basic phrases in Thai and looking out the window while the plane crossed over the countries I had never visited: France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, India. I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok on January 16th at 7 in the morning, local time. The humid heat hit me as soon as I left the air-conditioned plane. 91 degrees at 7 in the morning. Everything smelled different. Incense, spicy food, tropical flowers, dense humidity. I had booked a week at a budget hostel in the Siloam district. While I got oriented, 250 baht per night, equivalent to $7. The room was tiny, barely 50 square feet, with a twin bed and a noisy ceiling fan. The shared bathroom was at the end of the hall. It was perfect. The first 3 days, I simply walked. Bangkok was chaotic, noisy, overwhelming, and absolutely fascinating. Golden temples shining under the relentless sun, floating markets where vendors in small boats offered fruits I had never seen, tuk-tuks dodging impossible traffic, people constantly smiling despite the suffocating heat. One afternoon on Khao San Road, the backpacker street, I saw a bulletin board with job and volunteer offers. There were dozens. Teaching English in rural schools, helping in elephant sanctuaries, working in hostels in exchange for accommodation. A particular card caught my attention. Volunteers needed to teach English and Spanish at Chiang Mai Buddhist Orphanage. Room and board included. I tore off the card and called the number that same afternoon. A Thai woman named Somai explained to me in basic English that the Ban Doi orphanage housed 40 children from 5 to 17 years old. They needed volunteer teachers for language classes that would help the children get better jobs in the future. "When can you start?" asked Somai directly. "How about in 3 days?" I replied without thinking. On January 19th, I took a night train to Chiang Mai, a city in northern Thailand surrounded by green mountains and ancient temples. The orphanage was 30 minutes from the center, in a semi-rural area where rice fields met traditional wooden houses. Ban Doi was a modest complex, 3 two-story buildings painted pale yellow, a central courtyard with a Buddha statue, and a small vegetable garden where the children grew vegetables. Somai received me with a traditional bow, hands joined in front of the chest. "Welcome, Kun Arthur. The children are very excited. They assigned me a simple room in the teacher's building, twin bed, desk, wardrobe, windows overlooking the rice paddies. It was more than I needed. Classes would start the next day. That first night, I could barely sleep, but not from anxiety, from anticipation. At 64 years old, I was about to start something completely new, something that had nothing to do with companies, consulting, family obligations, or others' expectations. My first class was with a group of 10 children aged 8 to 12. They entered shyly, barefoot as was customary, and sat in a circle on the wooden floor. They looked at me with curiosity mixed with reverential fear toward any foreign adult. "Sawasdee crap," I said, attempting the Thai greeting. "My name is Arthur. I come from America." A small girl of about 9 with 2 pigtails raised her hand shyly. "America like movies?" she asked in broken English. "Yes, like Hollywood movies." All the children started talking excitedly. Movies were a universal language that transcended cultural barriers. We spent the first hour simply playing with English and Spanish words related to movies. Star, hero, action. Something happened in that simple room with barefoot children repeating words clumsily. I felt a deep peace I hadn't experienced in years. These children didn't ask me for anything except my time and knowledge. There were no hidden expectations, subtle manipulations, or selfish agendas, just pure gratitude for the opportunity to learn. During the next 3 months, I established a routine that healed something broken inside me. Waking up at 6 to the sound of temple bells, eating sticky rice for breakfast with the monks who visited the orphanage, teaching 4 classes a day of 2 hours each, having lunch with the children sharing stories, afternoons helping with chores, playing barefoot soccer in the yard, or simply sitting under the mango trees talking. The children adopted me in unexpected ways. They called me Ajarn Arthur, Teacher Arthur, with genuine respect. The girl with pigtails, whose name was Nong Ploy, started waiting for me every morning with a new drawing. A 14-year-old teenager named Chai asked me to tell him stories about America during breaks. One afternoon, Somai found me sitting alone in the garden, watching the sunset over the rice fields. She sat next to me in silence for several minutes before speaking. "Kun Arthur, the children love you very much. You are different from other volunteers. They feel they really matter to you. They matter to me more than I thought possible," I admitted with a hoarse voice. "These children have given me more in 3 months than many other people in my entire life." Somai nodded wisely. Sometimes we find our real family in the most unexpected places. Her words resonated deeply. Real family. Emily had used that term to refer to the Nelsons, but now I understood its real meaning. Family was not blood or obligation. Family was mutual choice, genuine respect, love that asked nothing in return except presence. At the end of March 2025, Somai suggested something to me that would change the course of the following months of my life. Kun Arthur, There is a Vipassana meditation retreat in Ubud, Bali. 30 days of silence, deep reflection, inner healing. I think it would benefit you a lot. The idea of 30 days in complete silence would have terrified me 6 months ago. But now, after 3 months teaching children who had shown me the real meaning of gratitude, without conditions, I felt I was ready for the next level of personal transformation. On April 5th, I flew to Bali, the Dharma Meditation Center. It was hidden among terraced rice fields and dense tropical jungle, 40 minutes from Ubud. It was a complex of traditional Balinese huts called bales, built with bamboo and thatched roofs. 50 participants from all over the world, Germans, Australians, Japanese, Brazilians, and several Americans. The rules were strict: no talking, no eye contact, no phones, no books, no music, just meditation, simple vegetarian food and observation of one's own thoughts for 8 hours a day. I handed over my phone on the first day without hesitation. I hadn't really used it since I left Chicago, except for occasional calls to David. The first 5 days were brutally difficult. My mind, used to decades of constant activity, rebelled against the silence. Thoughts about Emily surged without control. Memories of Claire. Obsessive analysis of past decisions. But gradually, with the guidance of the meditation teachers, I learned to observe those thoughts without clinging to them, like clouds passing through the sky. On the 13th day, during the silent meal in the communal dining room, I noticed a woman sitting alone near the window, gray hair cut in a modern bob style, about 60 years old, serene face but with lines that suggested suffering overcome. She wore a white linen blouse and beige pants. Something in her posture, the way she held the silverware, seemed strangely familiar to me. On the 21st day of the retreat, the period of noble silence ended. We could talk during meals and breaks. That afternoon in the central garden, the woman I had noticed approached with a cup of ginger tea. "Excuse the intrusion," she said in perfect English, "but I heard you speaking with one of the coordinators. I am Isabella Martinez from Miami. Arthur Vance." "Chicago," I replied, surprised to hear an American accent after weeks. "It is a pleasure." We sat under a frangipani tree talking about our journeys up to that moment. Isabella had sold her pharmacy in Miami 6 months ago, after her 2 adult sons tried to force her to give them money for dubious investments. When she refused, they accused her of being selfish and cut contact completely. "I worked 35 years building that business," she told me with a quiet but firm voice. "My husband died of a heart attack when the boys were 12 and 14. I raised them alone. I paid for private university. I helped them with their first businesses. And when I finally said no to an unreasonable request, I discovered they only loved me for my money." The similarity to my own story was shaking. During the next few days, Isabella and I spent more and more time together. Walks through the rice paddies talking about ungrateful children, unrecognized sacrifices, and the painful but necessary process of letting go. One afternoon, while we watched the sunset from the temple on the hill, Isabella mentioned something that woke my dormant professional curiosity. I have been researching organizations that work with vulnerable children in Southeast Asia. I want to use part of the money from the sale of my pharmacy for something meaningful. I don't want to die knowing I only work to enrich ungrateful sons. What type of project do you have in mind?" I asked. "A school," she replied, with eyes shining with enthusiasm. "A free school for children in poor communities in Cambodia. Real quality education, not just superficial charity, with well-paid teachers, adequate materials, long-term follow-up." Something inside me lit up. "I have experience in business consulting. You might need help structuring the project, managing budgets, establishing sustainable processes." Isabella looked at me with intensity. "Would you be interested in working with me on this?" "More than I thought possible," I replied honestly. We spent the last 9 days of the retreat planning. Isabella had $300,000 from the sale of her pharmacy, available for initial investment. I had business knowledge and recent experience teaching in an orphanage. Together we researched potential locations in Cambodia, construction costs, legal requirements, sustainability models. Siem Reap, suggested Isabella one afternoon, near Angkor Wat, but in surrounding rural communities where education is almost non-existent. We could start with 50 students, I added, doing mental calculations. Expand gradually according to resources and demand. Focus on English, basic math, practical skills. When the retreat ended on May 5th, Isabella and I flew together to Siem Reap to scout the terrain. During that 2-week research trip, something else bloomed between us. It wasn't passionate youth romance. It was something deeper. Companionship between two people who had been betrayed by biological family and now chose to build shared purpose. One night, dining at a small restaurant by the river, Isabella took my hand across the table. Arthur, I know we have barely known each other a month, but I feel I understand you in ways few people could. We have lived similar versions of the same pain. I feel the same, I admitted, squeezing her hand. For the first time in decades, I don't feel alone in my experience. During those weeks in Cambodia, I discovered that my phone kept in my backpack had intermittent signals. One afternoon, while Isabella negotiated land price with local owners, I turned on the device out of curiosity. 12 emails from Emily. The subject lines were progressively more desperate. Dad, please respond. We need to talk. I beg you. At least tell me you're okay. The last one dated 2 weeks ago. I am sorry for everything. Please come back. I deleted them all without opening them. Not out of cruelty, but because I had finally understood something fundamental. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I could forgive Emily for my own inner peace without needing to restore a relationship she herself had destroyed. Isabella noticed my expression when she returned. Bad news? No, I replied, putting the phone away. Just final goodbyes to a past that no longer belongs to me. December 2025. 1 exact year since I discovered Emily's betrayal. But that anniversary no longer hurts me. I am sitting on the terrace of my small apartment in Valencia, Spain, looking at the Mediterranean shine under the winter sun while I write these words. The Vance Martinez Foundation opened its doors in September 2025 on the outskirts of Siem Reap. We built 3 spacious classrooms, a library, a communal dining room, and housing for teachers. Isabella handled the entire administrative part with efficiency that only comes from decades managing a successful business. I designed the educational program using my experience in Chiang Mai. Currently, we attend to 230 children from rural Cambodian communities. We teach them English, Spanish, math, basic computing, and practical skills like carpentry and sustainable agriculture, all completely free. Local teachers receive decent salaries of $500 monthly, 3 times the national average. It is a sustainable model that will change lives for generations. I sold my consulting firm in Chicago last July for $1.2 million. I invested $800,000 in the foundation, creating an endowment fund that will generate perpetual income. The remaining $400,000 allow me to live modestly but comfortably, splitting time between Spain and Cambodia. I bought this 600 square foot apartment in Valencia for $200,000. It is small, simple, perfect. 2 bedrooms, balcony with sea view, 15 minutes walk from the central market. I spend 6 months here managing legal and financial aspects of the foundation, then 6 months in Cambodia, working directly with the children. Isabella lives in a similar apartment 2 streets away. Our relationship is hard to define by conventional standards. We don't live together. We don't talk about marriage. We are simply partners who chose to build something meaningful while enjoying each other's company. We dine together 4 nights a week, travel together, work together. It is more than enough. Last week, David came to visit me from Chicago. He brought news about Emily that I hadn't asked for but listened to without particular emotion. She is working, he informed me while we drank coffee on my balcony. Administrative secretary at an insurance office. $1,300 a month. Mark got a real job finally at an auditing firm. $2,000 a month. I did the calculations mentally. $3,300 monthly between both. Less than what I used to transfer monthly to Emily, alone. How is she handling it? They had to move, continued David. They sold the condo in the Gold Coast. With the profits they paid, accumulated debts, and bought a 500-square-foot apartment in a working-class suburb. Mortgage of $700 a month. A completely different world from the luxury of the Gold Coast where she had lived. And the Nelsons cut contact completely last year. Beatrice apparently said at a family dinner that Emily had used and humiliated them. They haven't spoken again. I felt a twinge of something that wasn't exactly satisfaction, but wasn't sadness either. Just a kind of natural justice unfolding. Emily asked about me. David looked at me carefully before answering. She mentioned to Monica 2 months ago that she understands now what she did. That working 8 hours a day, counting every dollar, worrying about bills, has given her perspective on everything you did for decades, but she is too proud to try to contact you directly. Good, I replied calmly, because although I have forgiven her internally, I have no interest in restoring what she destroyed. David nodded understandingly. Your will remains intact. 70% for Widow and Life Foundation, 30% for Claire Vance scholarships. Emily will only receive her mother's jewelry. Perfect. Let it remain that way. After David left, I reflected on the year past. 64 to 65 years old. For many an age of passive retirement waiting for the end. For me, the beginning of the most authentic life I ever imagined possible. Yesterday, I received photos from Cambodia by email. Nong Ploy, the Thai girl who used to wait for me with drawings now, is 10 years old and is learning Spanish with contagious enthusiasm. She wrote in her last message, Ajarn Arthur. When I grow up, I want to help children like you helped me. That message is worth more than all the years investing in Emily, waiting for reciprocity that never arrived. Isabella and I plan to expand the foundation to Vietnam next year. She has tireless energy for this. I have experience and accumulated connections. Together we form an extraordinary team, building real legacy, not of blood, but of measurable impact on vulnerable lives. Sometimes I think of Claire. I wonder what she would say seeing my life now. I think she would be proud, not of the distancing from Emily. That would have saddened her. But that I finally chose to live for myself, that I transformed pain into purpose, that I found real family in unexpected places. Emily will have to live the rest of her existence, knowing she rejected unconditional love for temporary financial comfort. She will work every day earning in a month what she used to spend on one dinner. She will raise children without the economic support of the grandfather she despised. She will grow old remembering she had a father willing to give everything, and she exchanged him for people who abandoned her as soon as she stopped being useful. Those are her consequences. I didn't impose them. She chose them. I instead wake up every morning with renewed purpose. I see the sunrise over the Mediterranean from my small balcony, but mine. I read emails from Cambodian children progressing academically. I dine with Isabella, sharing modest wines and deep conversations. I plan the next educational project. I travel freely without carrying the weight of toxic obligations. This year I learned that it is never too late to recover self-dignity. That real family is built with mutual respect, not with shared DNA. That sacrifices are only worth it when they are genuinely appreciated. That letting go is not failure, but necessary liberation. I am 65 years old, better physical and mental health than in the last decade. Clear purpose, quiet love, deep peace, significant legacy in construction. Emily is 33 years old, finally learning lessons she should have learned a decade ago. late but necessary. I don't feel revenge. I don't feel anger. I only feel immense gratitude, because her betrayal forced me to let go of a life I lived for others and build a life authentically mine. And that paradoxically is the best gift she inadvertently gave me. If you liked this story, support us with a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave us your opinions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box appearing to the left. Thank you for joining us.